When you stroll across a university campus, you might not really think much about why the paths curve just so, or why they chose those specific plants.
Right. But it turns out designing a university landscape is, well, it's surprisingly intricate, way beyond just making things look nice.
It's deeply connected to creating a space that works well and, crucially, one that's sustainable.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at a really insightful study on sustainable landscape in university campus urban design.
Okay.
Our main source here is a detailed thesis by Ahmed Ibrahim Amr from Ain Shams University. It really digs into the elements that make a campus landscape truly sustainable.
Okay, so this thesis, it breaks down sustainable landscapes into four key areas, right? What are those qualities?
Yeah, it pinpoints four essential qualities:
Hmm.
physical, ecological, individual use, and social qualities.
Hmm.
And what's really valuable, I think, is how these categories bridge both environmental and social sustainability.
Ah,
So it's not just about saving resources or healthy ecosystems, it's also looking at how people actually interact with and, experience these spaces.
so it's a much broader view than just like adding some trees. It's
Yeah.
holistic.
Exactly.
How did the researcher actually investigate all these different qualities? What was the method?
Emmer used a really thorough approach, started with a lot of literature reviews, to build that solid foundation.
Right.
Then he looked at real-world examples, case studies of contemporary Egyptian universities, the American University in Cairo, the German University in Cairo, and the British University in Egypt.
Okay, so actual campuses.
Yes. And to get even more specific, he used checklists to evaluate landscape features, handed out questionnaires for user feedback, and did in-depth interviews to get those richer insights.
Sounds like a really comprehensive piece of work.
It is.
So our mission today, for anyone listening who's maybe wondered about the thinking behind campus design or really any urban landscape,
Yeah.
is to pull out the most compelling practical insights from this research.
Yeah, let's boil it down.
We want to get the core principles of sustainable landscape design, but in a way that's clear, engaging, and doesn't feel like reading a dry academic paper.
Yeah.
Ready to jump into these physical qualities, see what makes a campus connected.
Definitely. Let's start with connectivity. Now, what's fascinating here is connectivity isn't just about getting from A to B easily. It's got deeper layers.
Right. The thesis says it benefits things on three levels, starting with the environment itself, like creating corridors for plants and animals, even air movement.
Exactly. Flora, fauna, airflow.
Yeah.
Then it extends to how users navigate the campus, making it easier, safer for people.
Cool.
And finally, from an urban design angle, good connectivity strengthens the campus's overall structure. It links areas, gives you a better sense of orientation.
So the key insight is that a well-connected campus is just a more resilient, functional ecosystem for nature and people.
Precisely.
And that leads into this idea of permeability in transport networks. Can you unpack that a bit? What does that mean practically?
Okay, think of permeability like this. Imagine a maze. A highly permeable network is like a maze with lots of short paths, many intersections. It gives you tons of ways to get places, minimizes dead ends.
Oh, okay.
So you get shorter travel distances, more options, whether you're walking or cycling. Less permeable networks, they'd have longer, maybe more direct routes, but fewer connections overall.
Right, so more choices, less maybe congestion, just a better flow.
Yeah, the takeaway is that a more permeable network makes for a more accessible and efficient system.
That makes sense. And the thesis mentions this reasonable walking distance, 400 meters. Where's that from and how literally should we take it?
Yeah, that 400-meter figure pops up a lot in urban planning. The thesis notes it came from U.S. research, back in the 60s, I think, looking at how far people would walk to public transport. But, and this is really important, what's reasonable can vary hugely, depending on the climate, the terrain, how nice the paths are, why you're walking,
Yeah.
even cultural norms.
So it's a benchmark maybe, but not a strict rule.
Exactly. Not rigid at all.
Got it. So how do you actually measure connectivity on a campus? It's got to be more complex than just counting roads.
Right. The thesis lays out several key metrics for a more nuanced picture. Things like intersection density, how many intersections per area. More intersections usually means more connections.
Okay.
Then street density, total length of streets per area. Higher density often means better connectivity too.
Uh-huh.
The connected node ratio looks at the proportion of points in the network that are actually connected. Average block length, shorter blocks tend to create more intersections. And effective walking area, which calculates how much of the campus is within that reasonable walk distance.
So these metrics let designers actually quantify and compare different layouts. That seems super useful in planning.
Definitely. It gives you concrete data.
What about the pedestrian pathways themselves? The walkways. What makes for good path design?
The thesis really emphasizes paths aren't just routes, they shape your
Hmm.
experience. It points out paths should be sized right for the number of people using them, obviously, avoid bottlenecks. But interestingly, it also says even smaller, less used paths should get the same visual design attention as the main ones.
Oh, that's interesting. Why?
For overall aesthetic coherence, it makes the whole campus feel more integrated visually. So the key takeaway is well-designed paths boost both usability and visual appeal.
That makes total sense. A consistent look creates a more harmonious feel. What about these breezeways or arcades the thesis mentions? They sound like more than just covered walks.
Oh, absolutely. They serve multiple key functions. They give pedestrians alternative routes, which helps spread out foot traffic, offers more variety.
Okay.
They also create this really valuable indoor-outdoor connection, which is great in different climates.
Yeah.
And beyond that, they can add real vitality to campus life, influence how nearby green spaces are designed and felt.
So they're functional but also add character.
Exactly. Architectural interest, multi-use areas, maybe make it feel more animated, safer too. The insight is these elements really enhance both pedestrian flow and the whole campus vibe.
Multifunctional spaces, definitely. Now, the thesis also mentions vehicular circulation. How does that fit into a sustainable campus?
It suggests a kind of hierarchy. The idea is often to have outer roads connecting to parking, then secondary roads getting you closer to buildings, and internal paths primarily for pedestrians, but usable by service or emergency vehicles if needed.
So separation is key, prioritizing people.
Often, yes. Prioritizing pedestrian movement and safety while still allowing for essential vehicles. The thesis gives examples like Bochum University in Germany, where outer roads have lots of green space, or the University of Guelph in Canada with its loop road system.
Different strategies for that balance.
Exactly, finding that balance to support people and necessary vehicles efficiently and sustainably.
Interesting how different places tackle that. Okay, let's shift to spaces. Open spaces seem absolutely fundamental to a university's character.
Totally. As the thesis rightly says, open spaces are just as defining as the buildings. And well-designed ones that actually support activities and give clear structure, they contribute to physical sustainability by encouraging use and function.
So thoughtful design is crucial for a vibrant campus.
Absolutely. The insight is it's key for function and vibrancy.
The thesis mentions Githin's 10 classifications of space organization. That sounds like a useful framework.
Yeah, Githin's gives a good way to categorize how spaces are organized: closed courts, open courts, more complex shapes. And these different structures directly impact how people experience and use the campus.
So understanding those helps designers be more intentional.
Exactly. Helps create more effective layouts.
So it's not just about having green areas. There's a deliberate organization behind it. What makes a space well created on campus, according to the thesis?
It says well-created spaces need to meet several criteria. They should be actively used, integrated within the campus boundaries, not feel like leftover bits.
Right.
They need to be functional, accessible to everyone. And crucially, they should interact positively with the buildings next to them, creating a cohesive whole.
Functional, accessible, contributing to that sense of place.
That's the core insight.
And the importance of a central space, like a quad, a lawn that seems common on successful campuses.
Exactly. A central space, whatever form it takes, grove, quad, lawn, plaza, it acts as a vital heart. It becomes a focal point for activities, a natural meeting spot, often key to the campus identity. It fosters that strong sense of community.
The thesis also mentions the variety of spaces. How does having different kinds of open areas help?
Variety in terms of vegetation, enclosure, materials used is really important for campus legibility. For wayfinding,
How so?
different types of spaces create distinct identities, makes it easier for people to orient themselves, remember different parts of campus. So spatial variety enhances navigation and makes the whole experience richer.
And the actual shape of a space can influence how it gets used.
Precisely. Like linear spaces naturally suggest walking, movement. More open or enclosed spots might be better for gathering or relaxing.
Okay.
The thesis emphasizes that the spaces between buildings need enough area and the right shape for their intended activities. Form follows function, essentially.
And this idea of outdoor educational spaces is really interesting, especially thinking about sustainability.
Yeah, providing outdoor spaces specifically for educational use fits perfectly with student-centered learning.
Hmm.
It gives unique opportunities for hands-on engagement, a different way to interact with course material, maybe connecting it more directly to the physical environment itself. The landscape becomes a learning tool.
That's great.
Eh,
Okay, let's talk facilities. Things like parking, street furniture. How do these seemingly just functional bits contribute to sustainability?
well, take parking. The thesis discusses trade-offs. Underground parking, better security, looks nicer maybe, gets rid of big surface lots.
Mhm.
But surface parking can mess with groundwater recharge, potentially cause erosion. It also highlights needing accessible parking, short-term spots, and crucially, integrating vegetation into parking areas.
Vegetation in parking lots.
Yeah, low plants for visibility, deciduous trees on islands for shade, reducing heat. The takeaway is even basic infrastructure like parking needs sustainable design thinking.
Trying to mitigate the downsides of necessary things. What about street furniture? Benches? Trash cans? Stuff we often ignore.
It plays a huge role in usability and comfort. The thesis stresses picking benches carefully material size, color for durability, and looks.
Okay.
Trash receptacles need to be strong, sized right for waste management and visually fit in, and lighting vital for safety and aesthetics. Focus on energy-efficient LEDs, louvered bollards to direct light properly.
Not too much light, though.
Exactly, adequate but not excessive. And using smart systems, timers, PV to save energy. The point is, well-chosen furniture enhances function, comfort, and sustainability.
So even tiny details matter in the overall sustainable puzzle. Resource use, accessibility, creating a positive environment. Okay, let's shift again. Ecological qualities. This is where we really hit the environmental side of things.
Exactly. The core here is maximizing resource efficiency and actively protecting ecosystems on campus.
How?
The thesis highlights key strategies: water reuse recycling, choosing plants that need less water or are even edible, improving soil health using recycled materials.
Right.
It also makes a critical point. The economic value of ecosystem services often gets ignored in business accounting, which can lead to environmental damage and, ironically, higher costs later.
We don't value nature till it's gone sometimes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The insight is a sustainable campus recognizes and values the essential work ecological systems do.
Okay, let's focus on water first.
Mhm.
What are the most important actions for water sustainability on campus?
The thesis lays out a whole suite of actions.
Mhm.
Starts with preserving that natural interaction. Rainfall, vegetation, soil, letting rain soak in naturally. Protecting and improving surface water quality, promoting groundwater recharge, maintaining natural stream flow if there is any, treating and reusing wastewater generated on site,
A lot there.
minimizing potable water use overall, actively capturing and reusing rainwater, gray water from sinks and showers, even treated black water from toilets. It's a multifaceted approach.
That's comprehensive. Thinking about water in cities, the heat island effect comes up, cities being hotter than rural areas. How can water management help with that?
Yeah, heat islands get worse with impermeable surfaces like asphalt that soak up heat. The thesis mentions using light-colored permeable paving helps reduce that absorption.
Makes sense.
It also gives a great example. University of Missouri used a bioretention system for parking lot runoff. But what's cool is they made it an educational opportunity.
How so?
Signage explaining how it works, the plant roles, made it interactive, engaging for students and faculty. So sustainable water management can also mean a cooler, comfier campus.
Fantastic. Function, education, engagement, all rolled into one. What about more direct water harvesting?
The thesis discusses rain harvesting systems. It distinguishes between direct collection, say from rooftops, often needs less treatment for irrigation, versus collecting runoff from other surfaces, which might need more filtering depending on the use.
So capturing rain at the source reduces reliance on potable water.
Significantly.
Porous pavements are another thing getting attention for stormwater.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons for a campus?
Porous pavements let rain seep through, reducing runoff, helping groundwater recharge. The thesis talks materials, pros, cons. A key thing is leachate management.
Leachate.
Yeah, making sure any pollutants the water picks up filtering through are dealt with properly, especially if you plan to reuse that water. So great benefits, but needs careful design and upkeep.
Got 'em. And green roofs seem increasingly popular. What makes them valuable for campus water management?
Green roofs offer a bunch of benefits. The Carnegie Mellon example is great. They reduce runoff by absorbing rain, mitigate heat islands through insulation and cooling, enhance biodiversity.
Habitat, too.
Yeah, for insects, birds, sometimes even space for urban ag or recreation. Carnegie Mellon using roof rainwater for toilets really shows that integrated reuse potential. They're multifunctional.
The thesis also mentions bioretention and vegetated swales, or bioswales. How do those work, briefly?
Bioretention systems are often like attractive rain gardens. Engineered soil, specific plants, maybe a gravel drain layer they capture and filter runoff.
Okay.
Vegetated swales, bioswales, are shallow, sloped channels with plants. They slow down runoff, filter it, let it infiltrate, remove pollutants. Nature-based solutions, basically.
Working with natural processes. What about the broader idea of water reuse on campus?
Water reuse just means using water more than once before it goes back to the natural cycle. The thesis distinguishes gray water from sinks, showers, relatively clean from black water, from toilets.
And processed water.
Yeah, like AC condensate. The key is finding sources of surplus water and matching them to appropriate lower-grade uses, irrigation, toilet flushing, and building the infrastructure for it. Santa Clara University using recycled water for irrigation is a good example.
So it significantly cuts demand for fresh water.
Exactly.
And finally, water-wise, efficient irrigation. What are best practices there?
Crucial for conservation. The thesis highlights regular maintenance, no leaks, using hydrozones, grouping plants with similar water needs,
What?
and using weather-based or smart controllers that adjust watering based on conditions, and ideally using non-potable water, gray water, recycled water whenever possible. Smart irrigation minimizes waste.
Clearly, sustainable water management is complex but vital. Okay, let's switch to vegetation. Plants look nice, but what's their ecological role according to the thesis?
It stresses that vegetation, chosen and managed right for the site, is fundamental to a healthy campus ecosystem.
Right.
And beyond environmental benefits, it highlights the positive impacts of people interacting with plants. Inspiration, less mental fatigue, maybe lower crime rates, healing, positive emotional effects. Plants do ecological work and benefit human well-being.
More than just aesthetics. The thesis splits vegetation qualities into environmental benefits and sustainable consumption productivity. Can you elaborate?
Sure. Environmental benefits are how plants regulate the environment, reducing heat islands, cutting building heating cooling needs, improving water quality, sustainable cultivation methods, fostering human-nature interaction.
Okay.
Sustainable consumption productivity relates to things like sequestering carbon, producing oxygen, potentially providing food or materials. It's a holistic view environmental function and potential economic contribution.
That brings us to phytoremediation. Sounds fancy. Using plants to clean things up.
Essentially, yes. Using plants for contaminated soil and water. The thesis lists several techniques. Rhizosphere biodegradation, soil microbes near roots break stuff down. Rhizofiltration, roots filter water. Phytostabilization, immobilizing pollutants in soil. Phytoaccumulation, plants store pollutants. Phytovolatilization, plants release less harmful gases. Phytodegradation, pollutants broken down inside the plant. It's a valuable, often cost-effective way to deal with contamination. Plan says cleanup allies.
Wow. What about just the day-to-day management of campus plants? Key principles for sustainability.
Sustainable management involves several things. Limiting turf grass, it's often high maintenance.
Right.
Selecting plants adapted to the local climate, needing less water. Improving soil quality helps retain moisture, nutrients. Using mulch conserves moisture, suppresses weeds, regulates temperature. Efficient irrigation, like drip. And integrated pest management, IPM prevention first, then biological mechanical controls before chemicals. Though the thesis notes chemicals are still common, sadly.
A holistic, proactive approach minimizes resource use.
Exactly. Promotes ecological balance.
Salvaging or reusing existing plants during development, giving them a second chance.
It can be valuable, preserving mature plants, but the thesis cautions you need to assess if the cost and effort are worth it. Some plants don't transplant well. Careful handling is key. So, good idea, but needs planning.
And edible landscaping. Integrating food plants, how does that fit a sustainable campus?
It involves putting food plants into ornamental designs, like community gardens or that rice paddy example.
A rice paddy, wow.
Yeah. Key characteristics. Manageable maintenance. Still looks good or provides shade. Ideally gives direct food products. Perennial preferred. Less soil disturbance. Pest resistant. It adds sustainability, education, community engagement.
Amazing depth of thought there. Okay, let's move to the foundation. Soil. Why is soil health so critical?
Soil is the literal foundation. Supports plants, filters water, cycles nutrients. The thesis stresses construction hammer soil, grading, compaction, pH changes, drainage issues, nutrient loss. buried debris.
Ouch.
So the main goal of sustainable soil management is protect and improve soil quality. Healthy soil is the bedrock of a resilient campus ecosystem.
First step in ensuring soil health when planning.
A thorough soil assessment early on. Understand past disturbance, identify healthy areas to protect, map conditions across the site. You need that baseline understanding.
And what makes soil healthy? What are we looking for?
It varies by region, but generally, good structure with distinct layers, horizons, enough organic matter, balanced pH, right salinity and minerals, good drainage, and aeration for roots and water.
How do you know?
There's even a simple texture by feel method mentioned, but the key is usually working with existing soil, improving it, not totally replacing its natural texture. Healthy soil balances physical, chemical, biological properties.
Soil organic matter keeps coming up. Why is it so vital?
Absolutely crucial. It's a primary nutrient source, improves soil structure, better water infiltration and retention, and feeds beneficial microbes essential for nutrient cycling.
Right.
Even darker color can suggest more organic matter. Lab tests give exact measures. And things like heavy grading can destroy it fast, so careful management during construction is key. Organic matter is the cornerstone.
So practical ways to improve campus soil health.
Several techniques. Adding compost and mulch boosts organic matter, improves structure. Aeration relieves compaction, improves drainage.
What about really bad soil?
Radial trenches filled with organic matter can help create better rooting zones. Modifying pH with sulfur or limestone, adding nutrients via compost or fertilizers based on plant needs and soil tests. Maybe raised berms with better topsoil.
Other strategies.
Balancing cut and fill during grading. Reusing existing topsoil instead of importing. And for under hardscapes like paths, using structural soil, engineered soil gravel mix provides support but allows some water root penetration. Lots of tools to improve soil health.
Fascinating science behind what most people call dirt. Okay, final ecological quality. Materials. What's the sustainable take on landscape materials?
The thesis hammers home looking at the entire life cycle, from raw resource extraction, processing, manufacturing, transport, use, and end-of-life disposal, reuse, recycling.
The whole chain.
Yeah. Sustainability assessment needs to look at inputs, outputs at each stage, embodied energy, embodied carbon, and the effects on ecosystems. A life cycle view is essential for truly sustainable choices.
That's not just how green it looks initially. You need the bigger picture.
Exactly. Primary processing. Often huge energy use, lots of waste. Manufacturing can involve toxic stuff, bad for health and environment. Transport, greenhouse gases. Disposal and landfills incineration, obvious problems. Recycling brews are much better.
What specific impacts?
Impacts on air quality, pollutants, water, acidification, eutrophication, land, deforestation, erosion. Every stage has potential impacts.
The thesis mentions embodied energy, EE, and embodied carbon, EC. Explain those quickly.
Embodied energy, EE, is the total energy used to produce a material extraction to factory gate plus transport. Embodied carbon, EC, measures the total greenhouse gas emissions as CO2 equivalent from those same stages.
Why are they important?
They're valuable metrics to compare the environmental footprint of different materials. Calculating them is complex, needs to consider weight, volume, density, other greenhouse gases too, not just CO2, but they give a quantitative measure.
And the human health impact of materials is critical too, right?
Absolutely. The thesis discusses dangers of toxic materials, carcinogens, PBTs, persistent bioaccumulative toxins, nasty stuff with long-term effects. It even includes a red list of substances to avoid or limit in landscape materials. Prioritizing health is fundamental.
So with all that, how do we actually choose more sustainable materials? Key criteria.
Several criteria for evaluation. Overall environmental performance, life cycle, EEC footprint, human health impact, life cycle cost, durability maintenance, recycled content, renewable content, durability lifespan, adaptability for future reuse, even embodied water used in production. It's a comprehensive assessment.
And specific strategies to use more sustainable materials.
Prioritize certified renewable resources, like sustainable wood. Reclaim and reuse existing materials. Metals, lumber, concrete, bricks, stones, great approach, adds character too. Actively seek materials with high recycled content, design efficiently to just use less material overall, and constantly rethink traditional ways, explore innovative alternatives, smart design, and smart material choices.
Can you give some concrete examples for a campus landscape?
Sure. Wood. Look for sustainable forestry certification. Reclaimed materials. Benches, paving, anything really. Recycled content materials, paving stones, furniture, decking. Rapid renewables like bamboo, cork, Linoleum for covered outdoor floors, maybe. Recycled plastic lumber for benches, boardwalks. Permeable paving for stormwater. Urbanite crushed recycled concrete aggregate. Asphalt. Use recycled aggregates. Low temp production. Brick. Durable, reusable. Concrete. Use recycled content, additives, raw finish. Aggregate stones. Local or reclaimed. Metals. Designed for disassembly, high recycled content, avoid toxic coatings. Bio-based materials are evolving too. Lots of options.
Really inspiring range available now. The thesis also mentions cross-cutting ecological relations. How do these elements, water, vegetation, soil, materials, interact?
This is where integrated design shines. The thesis shows how ecological systems can work together. Like a water system can also provide connectivity, define spaces, highlight areas visually.
Ah, synergy.
Exactly. Exposing sustainable water features rain gardens, wetlands offers educational value. Making them look good increases user acceptance. Dry detention areas for storms, they can be playfields or gathering spots when dry.
Smart.
Native plants with distinct looks. They become wayfinding landmarks, boost campus identity. These connections show how holistic ecological design enhances function, aesthetics, even social aspects. Designing for interconnections creates a more resilient, beneficial landscape.
These relations really drive home that it's not just adding green bits, it's a dynamic, interconnected system.
Okay, we've covered physical and ecological. Let's move to how the landscape supports the individual user, individual use qualities, the human experience.
Exactly. This centers on how people interact with and experience the campus on a personal level. The thesis looks at three key things: wayfinding, safety, and visual character aesthetics.
Let's start with wayfinding. Navigating big campuses can be tough, especially for newcomers. Key principles for effective wayfinding systems.
The thesis outlines a three-phase process: analysis, synthesis, evaluation. Analysis means studying how people move now, identifying landmarks, gathering points.
Yeah.
Synthesis is developing a clear, logical spatial organization and a hierarchy for signs. Evaluation is getting user feedback, what works, what doesn't.
Key principle. Clear orientation from arrival points. Intuitive connections between spaces. Minimizing choices at any one point don't overwhelm people. Effective wayfinding is user-centered, relies on clear organization and communication.
And the signs themselves. What makes for good campus signage?
Strategic placement at key decision points. Clear visual hierarchy size, style indicating importance. Readability is paramount. The thesis mentions ADA guidelines, typeface size, weight, spacing, color contrast, ensuring legibility for everyone, including those with visual impairments. Clear, concise, accessible signage.
Interesting how sustainability even links to wayfinding, not just the info on the signs.
Great point. The thesis highlights ways. Optimizing materials and sign production, less waste. Designing for modularity flexibility, easy updates. Using natural daylighting for signs where possible. Considering recyclability, reusability of materials at end of life, maybe mechanical fasteners, not permanent glue. Sustainable principles apply even to small things like signs.
Now, safety. Feeling safe is crucial for using campus spaces, especially evenings or quieter areas.
The thesis distinguishes two aspects: hazard prevention and creating a feeling of safety. Hazard prevention is practical stuff: construction signs, chemical spraying notices, safe pedestrian crossings.
Right.
Creating a feeling of safety is more about environmental design, avoiding dark, isolated spots, managing dense vegetation, no hiding places, ensuring natural surveillance where the layout lets people see and be seen. Safety needs hazard mitigation and thoughtful design for security.
The thesis references specific safety design criteria.
Yeah, drawing on Deasy and Laswell, it mentions things like clearance hazards, enough vertical space; object hazards, no obstructions; collision hazards, minimizing pedestrian vehicle conflicts; stability hazards, sound railings, steps, walls.
And that natural surveillance idea.
Key principle in CPTID crime prevention through environmental design. Strategic lighting, seating, clear sight lines, enhance visibility, deter crime. But the thesis also wisely notes Thompson's caution: avoid overly defensive design that kills social interaction and feels unwelcoming.
The tricky balance.
Yeah.
Safe but not sterile.
Exactly. It's about balancing hazard prevention with creating welcoming, socially active spaces.
How can landscape elements specifically boost that sense of safety?
Various things help. Clear signage helps orientation, finding help. Good lighting is essential, especially at night. Comfortable seating in well-lit, visible spots encourages people to linger, creates activity. Shade and shelter make people more comfortable outdoors, enhancing that natural surveillance. More people using a space actively makes it feel safer.
So well-designed infrastructure plus active use equals safer campus.
That's a big part of it.
Finally, visual character, aesthetics. How does the look and feel impact sustainability and user experience?
Visual character is that crucial first and lasting impression. The thesis says it's shaped by landscape features, architectural landmarks, color palettes, materials used. Distinctive landmarks, natural or man-made, historical, unique, play a huge role in a memorable visual identity.
Like iconic buildings or specific school colors.
Exactly. Those become strongly associated with the university, shaping its visual character. It's a powerful part of campus identity and how users experience it.
And the landscape elements themselves, beyond buildings, can be landmarks too.
Absolutely. Unique rocks, distinctive plants, water features, terrain, well-designed structures within the landscape. And these can change with seasons, adding interest. Sometimes key landscape features even get into the university logo.
Like the Minot State example with glacial features.
Great example of that strong connection. Landscape elements powerfully shape a unique visual identity.
And those formal spaces, like main entrances, flagpole areas, they shape identity too.
Yes, ceremonial spaces, thoughtfully designed and linked to history or values, become powerful visual symbols of the institution, reinforce identity.
The thesis brings up prospect and refuge theory. Sounds important for aesthetics and our basic sense of place.
Appleton's theory proposes we have an innate preference for environments offering both a broad view, prospect seeing what's around, and shelter security, refuge feeling protected.
Makes sense.
It's influenced architecture and landscape aesthetics a lot. Suggests these needs play a key role in how we perceive beauty, comfort, safety. Designs with both prospect and refuge tend to feel more appealing, comfortable.
We like to see, but also feel secure. The thesis also says aesthetics can hint at functionality.
Insightful point. Visual character can give subtle clues about ecological function, like high biodiversity might suggest a thriving ecosystem. But aesthetics are subjective, right?
True.
Varies by person, culture, context. The Giga Island wind turbines example is good seen as intrusions by some, later appreciated for sustainability. So aesthetics can link to function, but evaluation is subjective.
And vegetation seems especially key for our aesthetic preferences.
Studies consistently show vegetation boosts positive perception. Shade from trees is highly valued, like that University of Jordan study found. Olmsted's quote captures that restorative effect. Natural elements generally have a positive sensory impact. Vegetation is vital for pleasing, restorative landscapes.
And the site's broader context surroundings also shapes the campus's visual character.
Absolutely. The thesis mentions AUC's design influenced by its desert setting, or Olin College integrating with its wooded topography. The site's unique traits are the starting point for a distinct, relevant visual identity. Character should respond to context.
So wrapping up individual use qualities, key design principles for a positive, sustainable individual experience.
Several key principles. Create a memorable, distinctive image. Ensure legibility nodes, landmarks, districts, paths to help navigation. Minimize confusing choices, and always consider the users, decision makers, and the environment throughout the process. Goal is a clear, cohesive, context-appropriate identity that resonates. Prioritize memorability, legibility, ease of navigation, responsiveness.
These individual qualities really stress that a sustainable landscape has to be user-centered, thinking about people's needs and experiences every day. Okay, final quality, social qualities. Exploring the crucial social side of sustainable campus landscapes.
This is where we look at how landscape design fosters social interaction, builds community, cultivates belonging among diverse campus groups. The thesis references Paul Selman defining social sustainability through inclusive decision-making, positive person-environment interaction, equity, well-being. It's crucial to understand the various cultural and social groups on campus. Their needs, interactions, perceptions can differ hugely. A socially sustainable landscape actively supports community.
Considering the cultural character in different groups makes perfect sense. A university is a microcosm.
Exactly. Wait, cited in the thesis points out different dynamics between faculty, staff, students, undergrad versus grad, full-time versus part-time. Understanding these distinctions is fundamental to designing a landscape that works for everyone.
And Nassauer's framework.
How landscapes provide info, shape experiences, prompt actions, create ambience that also shows the environment's powerful social role. And, as the thesis notes, human behavior is often unpredictable, adding complexity. Designing for social sustainability needs deep understanding of the campus social fabric.
Social interaction itself takes different forms on campus.
Peterman's classification is useful. Manifest planned events, latent, unplanned but predictable like hallway chats, and chance, unexpected.
Okay.
Space design influences these by affecting visibility, seeing each other, accessibility, moving through occupying space, and comfort, how inviting it feels. Design can strategically foster different interaction types.
Friendship formation is vital socially. Can landscape design actually encourage friendships?
Well, you can engineer friendship, but the thesis says proximity and opportunities for interaction are key underlying factors.
Wow.
Creating comfortable, inviting outdoor spots, avoiding isolation or breaching privacy in shared areas facilitates casual contacts, repeated encounters that often spark friendship. Studies show proximity matters.
Right.
Interestingly, physical walls hinder interaction more than non-physical barriers like level changes. Granovetter's strength of weak ties, the importance of casual acquaintances, also highlights designing for frequent brief encounters.
Practical design elements.
Visible, accessible activity spaces, shortcuts intersecting near activity zones, informal performance spots, small standing areas or seats along busy walkways. Thoughtful design creates opportunities for those friendship-starting encounters.
Group membership provides identity, belonging. How can landscape help group formation?
The thesis notes people tend to form small groups. So landscape design should offer varied seating for small numbers, plus flexibility for larger gatherings in active areas.
And climate matters.
Especially in hot, dry climates like Egypt, ample shaded areas are crucial for encouraging outdoor social interaction. People naturally gather where it's comfortable. Adaptable, comfy spaces cater to different group sizes.
This idea of informal social centers popping up spontaneously is interesting, not official spots.
Exactly. Non-territorial places friends just meet steps near an entrance, a specific tree, an area near labs. They develop organically based on convenience, comfort, location. Recognizing and maybe subtly enhancing these natural hubs boosts social vibrancy.
Communication, another key social quality. How does the physical landscape help people communicate?
It plays a subtle but vital role. Ambient conditions matter, comfy temperatures, not too noisy, acoustics. Clear signage, also individual use, helps people find each other. How space looks used can communicate its function.
Design elements for social communication.
Wider side zones and high traffic for quick chats without blocking flow. Flexible seating and gathering spots facing each other. Sufficient appropriate lighting, especially evenings. But also balancing lively social spots with quieter areas for privacy. Thoughtful design fosters communication.
Identity and territoriality, social qualities linked to landscape. How do they show up on campus?
Landscape shapes overall campus identity, visual character, activities, history, social vibe. Think iconic landmarks or traditions.
Right.
Territoriality here isn't legal ownership, more a temporary sense of connection. A favorite study spot, a courtyard where friends hang out. User participation in planning can enhance this feeling ownership of spaces they help shape. Landscape shapes identity and belonging.
The thesis mentions different social distances, cultural norms affecting space use. It's nuanced.
It is. Cultures have different unspoken norms for personal space. Spatial arrangements can reflect these. But the thesis notes, shared interests, activities often become stronger drivers of interaction in campus social spaces than just physical distance.
So it's not just proximity.
No. Community hierarchy, individual position also shape groupings. And social segregation happens based on language, fashion, etc. The Gucci corner example at AUC illustrates this physically. Social interaction is complex. Culture, interests, hierarchies, segregation all play roles.
And gender differences influencing space use.
Can vary by university type, culture. The U. Jordan study found males dominated outdoor spaces more. Where such patterns exist and seem unfair, design might try to create more inclusive outdoor environments for all genders. Considering gender needs can contribute to equity in some contexts.
Public participation seems critical for socially sustainable landscapes. Why involve the community?
The thesis strongly argues plazas, public spaces can't be designed in isolation. Involving users is essential to meet needs, reflect preferences, foster community ownership, and belonging.
Benefit.
Deeper place attachment, more responsibility for care, better fulfillment of requirements, cooperation, long-term success. Participation is fundamental.
Effective methods for involving the campus community.
A range of methods.
Yeah.
Advisory committees, focus groups, community forums, participatory design workshops, surveys, interviews, transact walks, walking the site together. Observation mapping current use.
Now measure success.
Number diversity of participants, common goals identify, how much user feedback is actually used. Various methods can effectively engage the community.
Bringing social qualities together. What's the link between physical spaces and social interaction?
A direct, significant link. Activity presence drives interaction likelihood. Well-connected, comfortable spaces, well-lit, welcoming, naturally foster social qualities by attracting people, encouraging them to stay and interact. Physical design directly influences social patterns.
So, concluding social qualities. Key takeaways for a socially sustainable campus landscape.
Several crucial points. Visibility, accessibility of activities boosts interaction. Flexible seating in busy zones promotes it. Suitable ambient shelter are essential. Good lighting at night is key. Balance crowded versus private spaces. And, critically, meaningful public participation in design is vital for meeting needs and fostering social sustainability.
Right. It's intentionally designing to support community well-being and interaction.
Through many interconnected strategies.
These social qualities really show sustainable landscape isn't just environment or individual comfort. It's about a thriving, inclusive social ecosystem. Now, the thesis includes case studies of 3 Egyptian universities. Briefly, which ones and why?
Yes, American University in Cairo, AUC, German University in Cairo, GUC, British University in Egypt, DUE, chosen because their contemporary campuses in an arid environment, opened post-2000, varying sizes, different stated sustainability initiatives, AUC more prominent.
How are they analyzed?
Evaluated on the 4 qualities: physical, ecological, individual, social, using a detailed checklist, based on literature, observation, reports, and the site's rating system principles. Items got unit values for comparison.
And based on that checklist, comparative strengths and weaknesses, what stood out?
Okay, quick rundown. Physical. AUC generally higher in connectivity, BUE lowest, narrow paths, limited access. Ecological connectivity low for all. Pedestrian circulation. AUC best, BUE low again. Vehicular. AUC best, hidden services parking links. BUE lowest, narrow roads, no outdoor parking. Ecological aspect low, except AUC's partial permeable parking.
Spaces, facilities.
Spaces. AUC BUE lower, lacked central space. GUC's central space had interfering traffic. Facilities. AUC highest, BUE low, no student parking, poor furniture. All lacked good public transport links.
What about the ecological qualities? Water, plants, soil, materials.
Water. AUC highest, management reuse, BUE lowest, minimal methods, potable water irrigation. Vegetation. AUC highest, native low water, BUE GUC more aesthetic, less ecological focus. Soil. AUC highest amendment, local soil. BUUC lower, common sand, low organic matter. Materials. AUC highest, recycled local bio-based DFD. BUE GUC lower, less durable flooring, limited local recycled.
And individual use and social qualities.
Wayfinding. AUC highest, zoning, landmark signs, BUE lowest, no outdoor signs. Safety, AUC generally higher, surveillance, lighting, visual character. AUC GUC perceived positively, BUE less consistent. Social qualities. AUC GUC generally better interaction spaces, BUE limited.
The thesis also used sites points beyond those core categories. Any highlights?
Yes, all got credit for saving arable land, desert building, but ecosystem habitat support wasn't a big factor. Proximity to service transport varied. Street furniture provision noted, but quality varied. Waste sorting, renewable energy limited. Wastewater infrastructure, proximity generally okay.
Based on all that, the overall thesis conclusions on sustainable landscape practice at these universities.
The main takeaway: landscape sustainability wasn't a primary driver in practice, except maybe some AUC initiatives. Economic benefits seemed the main motivator, not deep ecological thinking early on. Sustainability often got compromised during construction due to perceived costs, widespread chemical use for fertilizer pests, lack of documented invasive species info for Egypt noted, and public awareness among users seemed low. They didn't always notice sustainable features.
And the key overall recommendations from the thesis to promote more sustainable practices.
Governmental regulations are seen as crucial. Connecting nature saving to economic value helps create incentives. Actively implementing graywater wastewater reuse is vital, especially in arid areas. Showcasing and interacting with sustainable features for education awareness. Promoting native adapted plants. And fundamentally shifting from purely aesthetic design to environmentally relevant design, considering the broader context and long-term sustainability.
Incredibly valuable insights and recommendations. It really highlights a big opportunity for universities as learning centers to lead on this. Which brings us to our final thought for you, our listener.
Yeah.
Considering their educational mission, their community impact, What is the true role and responsibility of universities in actively leading towards genuinely sustainable landscapes, going beyond just saving money? Something to mull over as we see these important spaces evolve.
Indeed it is. A lot to think about there.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating, complex world of sustainable university campus landscapes. We've really only scratched the surface of Ahmed Ibrahim Amar's thesis, but we hope you have a deeper appreciation now for that intricate interplay of physical, ecological, individual, social qualities needed for truly sustainable, thriving spaces.
Yeah, it's all connected.
We encourage you to look closer at your own campus or urban environments. Notice the elements of sustainable design, or maybe the lack thereof.
Definitely. Start looking around with these ideas in mind.
Some follow-up questions maybe to ponder. What are the biggest barriers to implementing these practices more widely? How can community participation be best integrated into design? What role might technology play going forward?
Great questions for further thought.
We hope you'll join us for our next deep dive as we continue to unearth those compelling nuggets of knowledge hidden in our sources.